And when you send us out there to do that job, we do damage because it's a pointless activity. We have to end this. How it ends? We start talking about it. And I want to give you an example and I'll wind up. I'd like to thank the women that are here today for representing a group of people who studied real hard and finally, by 1920, became intelligent enough to vote. I think they deserve a big round. See, there's only one of two possibilities. Either women were too stupid to vote before 1920, or we had a policy in effect that stopped women from voting before 1920. You men in the audience can pick whichever one of those two you want. I happen to be married for 37 years to somebody smarter than me, so it's not hard for me to figure it out. That policy didn't become wrong in 1920. It was wrong in 1776. But we did it for 150 years. And I use as an example of stupid policy that we have done for a long time before we finally woke up and decided to change it. This drug war is a stupid policy that we've done long enough. And it's time to wake up and change it. Thank you.
I guess if anyone has any questions, we could dedicate like 10 minutes.
Okay, you mentioned all the different aspects of the drug, but you didn't mention the pharmaceutical company.
Yeah?
Yeah, you didn't mention the pharmaceutical company.
Well, the pharmaceutical companies are involved in a legal, licensed, operated business that results in 150,000 deaths every year in this country. All the illegal drugs added together add up to about 30,000 deaths a year in this country. That is something that we have to deal with. I don't think, and I'm sure, that prohibition is not an answer to the pharmaceutical companies because it's not an answer to anything. These companies are there. In fact, they happen to be one of the legalization movement's opponents because they see the legalization of these other drugs as a threat to their monopoly. Okay? So they exist. They're a bump in the road we have to deal with, but they're there.
Okay, well, I mentioned because they're considered to be gateway drugs. You have people that abuse drugs with some of the, the painkillers, then they go on to other things.
If there is such a thing as a gateway drug, I am positive, and I'll tell you all what it is. And I remember this from back in the 70s when marijuana was the gateway drug, and everybody was talking about marijuana being the gateway drug. 85% of the people that are using heroin started out on marijuana. So therefore, marijuana is the gateway drug. But hold on one second. 100% of the people on heroin started out on milk. Milk is the real gateway drug, okay? There is no such thing as a gateway drug. People look for ways to alter their consciousness. Bill Bennett was addicted to slot machines. That got his endorphins going and got all that stuff going in his head like he needed. Some people like betting on horse races. Some people like reading a very intense book. Some people like long walks in the woods. And some people like ingesting drugs into their body to alter their consciousness. This is a normal human activity. And for us to judge one way as better than another is simply wrong. Don't misunderstand me. If somebody punches somebody in the nose, that's what we build prisons for. But if you're not hurting other people or other people's property, it is simply none of the government's business.
All right. You're also saying too, okay, with all these drugs going around, over-the-counter drugs, okay, the last 5 years in Utica alone, okay, within the last 5 years, has been over 3,262 drug arrests.
Okay.
Okay, most of them were for prescription drugs.
Okay, good.
Okay,
If they're misuse of prescription drugs, that's fine.
but we're talking from teenagers from the age of 13 to 20.
Do you have a question?
I do actually. I'm not trying to like put this you down or anything like that. Technically about the gateway drug, that's not entirely true because I'm 26 years old and I've been off drugs for like almost 15 months. And I've actually found out that yes, marijuana, I mean in some cases it could be the gateway drug, but it's not actually not because I've been into like 7 different programs before, and what I've actually found out is that every single time that I left that program, I went towards marijuana because marijuana was my first drug. So let's say if it's somebody, it doesn't necessarily have to be marijuana, it could be like heroin. Let's say somebody's on heroin and they've been clean for like 15 months. The first thing they're gonna go back to is that first drug they came to.
Well, but that's, my point is that that is a personal choice that that individual drug user makes. It is not a criteria of the drug. We're blaming the drug for that, all right? So I'm assuming then, if people buy into the gateway theory, if I'm an alcoholic and I never smoked marijuana, then I'm not a drug addict because I never had a gateway. Well, it's absurd, okay? My gateway drug was that first sip of beer that I stole out of my daddy's glass when I was 6 years old or whatever. What's that old line? Causation is not...
Correlation.
Pardon?
Correlation does not mean causation.
Exactly, thank you. Correlation does not mean causation. And but it's been a boon to the drug warriors to pin that term on it, because that demonizes it and that makes us a bigger reason to go after it.
Okay.
How you doing? My name's Tony. The reason why I'm here is I was never in favor of drugs. I'm an alcoholic, actually. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I think alcoholism kills more people than anything, practically. I think even if drugs were legalized or the penalties were a lot less severe, I think a lot more people would step up who want help and they wouldn't be afraid. A lot of people are afraid to talk and say, look, I'm a cocaine addict or this and that. I think in the long run, I think a lot more people would be in recovery.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. I do, most of the presentations I do are to really radical, crazy groups like Rotary clubs and Kiwanis clubs and Lions clubs. And I have people come up to me at the end of a presentation, and if they're an alcoholic, they have no problem in front of their other Rotarian friends saying, I'm an alcoholic, I've been clean for 8 years, and my recovery's going longer. If they're a crack user, if they're a heroin addict that's in recovery, that isn't said in front of the other Rotarians. That's off to the side, a little discussion that we have. And that's absurd, because the problem is exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the drug. I had somebody say to me, you're not going to compare alcoholism to heroin addiction. I said, well, no. Because heroin is probably, if it's pharmaceutical grade, is probably a lot less harmful to you than alcohol is. But for the people that deal with the alcohol, with the drug addict, it's the same. If you're a drug addict, you lie, cheat, and steal in order to maintain your addiction. And that doesn't mean you steal money from stores, but you steal time from your family, you do all kinds of things to maintain. And those are the things that irritate the people that are around the addict. That's what upsets the people around the addict about the addict, is the addiction behavior. And it doesn't make any difference what they're addicted to. The behavior's the same.
Because I worked for this big police, I worked for this huge police department one time, and extremely awful lot of drug use going on in that department, and alcohol and everything. And they couldn't go to the insurance company and stuff like that and say, look, I need treatment for drug addict, because actually they'd be fired.
Right.
Exactly. That was another thing that went on.
That's another thing that we do by criminalizing this, is we push people away from the help that they need.
Exactly.
Any more questions?
Are there other societies and cultures that don't have this drug problem?
No. Is marijuana legal in Amsterdam? No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
That's controlled. Talking about the Eastern Hemisphere.
It is not legal in any of the countries, no country that has signed the internet.
In the culture and society. Are you going to say
Yes, they have the same problems. This is a human problem. It may not take the same shape that it takes, but it's the same problem. Okay? I forget where it was in one of the Asian countries where they put a real heavy pressure on the drug thing, and they started executing people and stuff. People were people were getting high by taking a coconut shell, cutting it in half, putting it over cow dung, and then sniffing off the methane. Okay? Now, they weren't taught to do this. They just found this way to alter their consciousness. Altering normal consciousness is a human experience. It is not a societal experience.
Yes, and that's a dramatic incident. But in statistics and in the mores of the culture overall, I think there's a lot of cultures and societies still, well, if not a lot, that are vastly different from ours.
There are.
They're more civilized. Iran is a case in point.
Well,
so I don't think you can speak to Iran.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I have people come up to me sometimes and they say, well, you know what they do to you in Saudi Arabia if they catch you with drugs? And I say, yeah, they take you down in the middle of town, they cut your head off. And they get a big smile on their face and they say, yeah, that's right. And I always have two comments to make about that. One, When I think of countries I want America to be more like, call me crazy, but Saudi Arabia isn't one of the first ones that pops into my head. Two, you know what they do every year in Saudi Arabia? They take people down to the middle of the town square and they chop their head off for drugs. And you know why they do it every year? Because it doesn't work. If it worked, the rest of the people see that head rolling through the courtyard and the drug problem, not me. But even with that approach to the problem continues. It does not go away.
Okay.
Hold on, I want to keep it clear. I don't think we need to debate on whether there's a drug problem internationally. Let's kind of stay on point. This is about the war on drugs in America. And I think we need to keep it clear that that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about Iran or Saudi Arabia. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with any other culture. It has to do with our
Well,
culture.
I said
So
that
just
in-
with that in mind, I would like to give Jessica an opportunity to give her presentation. Thank you.